Nobody wants this barge, and most of all, the asylum seekers don't want to live there. Many of them are terrified of water because of the Channel and Mediterranean crossings that they've made.
Transport Minister Richard Holden has said he can't put a time frame on when asylum seekers will be housed on the Bibby Stockholm barge in Dorset. The Home Office had been planning to send the first 50 migrants to the barge moored at Portland Port later today. But final safety checks are still being carried out with fire service approval pending. The barge could become operational on Wednesday with a Home Office assessment expected later. I'm joined now by Nicola David, an independent campaigner on asylum-related issues and large-scale containment sites, especially the Bibby Stockholm. Nicola, welcome to the programme. I can't help feeling there are shades of the Rwanda policy around this, what seems like a slightly unworkable diktat that is yet to be realised.
Yes, I think it's more than slightly unworkable. Obviously, Rwanda was a big story for the government, but actually, in fact, it's only going to take about 200 people a year if it goes ahead. In our sector, we're calling it performative cruelty. This is a way of containing people under conditions of quasi-detention, and it's not safe. There's going to be 248% of the population that the barge was actually built for, and it's 47 years old. It's really not going to work, and it needs to not go ahead.
You describe it as performative cruelty. So what do you think the aim of the policy is? And we need to house asylum seekers somewhere. At least this is a positive suggestion.
There's nothing positive about it, and we could do what we've always done and what we did before COVID, which was to house asylum seekers in the community. I'm as appalled as anyone else that we're spending £5.6 million a day on hotel bills. And this barges and the other containment sites are supposed to reduce the cost of the hotel bills and bring the number of hotels down. It won't do that. I did a comprehensive report back in May, which found that at very best, the Home Office will save £8 a day per person. And the number of people on the barge will be 1% of the 51,000 asylum seekers actually out there in the community. They need to live in communities, not on camps. And we are edging very perilously close to seeing these kind of sites as concentration camps. And we know where that goes.
There were reports the other day about putting tents up on old military sites and things again to house asylum seekers. It doesn't seem that the UK would have the climate for that sort of accommodation.
We certainly don't. I don't know how that could work in winter. I don't see how that could possibly escape all kinds of judicial reviews. And one of the problems that people often forget is that these things end up in the courts. It ties up huge amounts of lawyer time. And incidentally, there's no such thing as a woke lefty activist lawyer. They're simply lawyers who can't make up laws that the courts decide. But a huge amount of money is spent by the Home Office on litigation around issues like this, around either the site or the human rights issues that come out of the site for individual asylum seekers. It's a waste of time, it's a waste of money, and it causes untold misery for asylum seekers, some of the most vulnerable people in the world.
And what about the safety of the barge itself? As I understand it, there are safety checks that need to be signed off before it can be put into use. And I think there's also repair work needed to be done. Is that right?
The repair work was done in dry dock in Falmouth, where they found that huge sections of the hull were rotten and had to be entirely replaced. So I'm sure those sections are rotten. I wouldn't want to drive a car after it had been involved in a head-on motorway crash, because who knows what other structural faults haven't been found. There's going to be 248% of the intended capacity. Each person will have a living space the size which is smaller than a car parking space. The corridors are very narrow, extremely narrow, the same on all three levels with no external windows. It would be disorienting. There are no life jackets on board. There will be no fire drills. There will still be the same two main exits for fire exit. It's a disaster waiting to happen, whether you want to call it Grenfell or Hillsborough, because when people come off the barge, they'll be required to be evacuated into a really small compound that couldn't possibly hold 550 people. It has 2 sets of locked gates and 15-foot fences. So if people came into that, they couldn't get out, and the emergency vehicles is the only way in for emergency vehicles, and they wouldn't be able to access the barge. It's a nightmare.
Do you think, despite all your qualms, this will go ahead?
I think the Home Office is very keen for it to go ahead. It's the Prime Minister's and the Home Secretary's best desire that it would go ahead, because they think it's going to solve problems, or at least in the public eye. It didn't go ahead for their first asylum seeker containment site at Linton on Ouse last year. I was part of the campaign group there, and we fought off the Home Office on that occasion. So I'm hopeful this time, but I think they really have a point to prove, and they're going to push for it.
And can I just ask you finally, what's the local mood regarding the barge? Are you aware?
Nobody wants it. The only people who want it are the Home Office and the many, many companies who all have a stake in this. I mean, CTM, the company that has the contract with the Home Office, has got a £1.6 billion contract to manage this in some hotels. So, if you're a private company, it's great, but there's nobody, MPs, local authorities, local communities, humanitarian groups, faith groups, nobody wants this barge. And most of all, the asylum seekers don't want to live there. Many of them are terrified of water because of the Channel and Mediterranean crossings that they've made.
Thank you so much, Nicola David, independent campaigner on asylum-related issues. Thank you very much for joining me.